Okay, a simple water-based reality model, light being the mechanism of force. Outside of our universe, the cosmic microwave background, our sphere of influence, that's as far as our expansion can push and retain a surface. The surface of the cosmic microwave background is ice 18. It's hexagonal, windows, vast, 6 something times 10 to the 139 times bigger than the dot point at the center of the planet. So it's massive, and the windows are tiny. So it's atomic scale, hexagonal crystalline structure of ice 18. It's austenitic, which means it's glacially moving, and so it also has a temperature increase that's measured by 10 points in the digits. A regular beat of a temperature increase. There's a sound that is emitted. It's a groaning sound, I suggest. It's the sound of a glacier, is the noise that we hear from the cosmic microwave background. That surface, massive surface, is sustained by expansion from inside that sphere of influence, from the center, where we are. The center of the planet, therefore, the system, this planet is out of whack, but the center of the system is a chip of ice, a sphere, a particle, a tiny nanosphere of ice. And that ice is created from chips of random ice because it's fractured, because it's under compression. It's got nowhere to go. So, but the compression will not be removed. That compressive force must continue to compress. The stress will never be relaxed. And so the strain response must be greater than the stress that's applied to it. And that it does that through cavitation of force. And so that the fracturing, this tiny particle of ice at the center, whatever particle of water finds itself at the center of this system, which is all floating around, will suffer this compaction at its heart. If that compaction is perfectly spherical, it'll sing, literally sing in the bearing, because it will create a fluid around it. And so that the center chip will become free, the free floating bearing in a water around it, inside the pack of ice around it. And that's the cavitation, that's the negative Poisson's ratio, that's the vacuum energy, that's the negative meter cubed, which is a volume increase, because it's a vacuum increase. And so when you stress water, you get cavitation of vacuum energy. And so it's the opposite. We've now got the two states of water as the atomic, subatomic, wafer-thin surface that doesn't exist as a thickness, but it just about does now. This is what measures it. Most of the spheres that can't be realized because there's just not enough space to fit a surface in. That's how far out you have to go to actually fit in an actual surface, and it's then got an atomic structure. Picture it as like a graphene, if you like, a wafty graphene. At the center here we've got our aggregate chips. Now this is key. So Action Lab did his experiment, and I hadn't triggered this. I went, no, that's wrong. And so now when you imagine that you've got the sand floating on water, the aggregate in the sand is nestled in the aggregate. It's surrounded by other flints of sand, and they're all the flat faces, and they've all been floated and nestled. They're all sitting nicely together. There is absolutely no room between those pieces of sand at all, and yet there'll be water in all the interstices where they're not actually touching. Yeah? There'll be gaps, won't there? Water there. So now when you compress that force, that you're in the whole thing is actually floating, because it's like quicksand. So the whole thing is floating. So wherever you push down, you're creating a zone of influence, a sphere, and you've increased the strain response of the sand around you by pressing it, by stressing it more. You've increased the strain response more, and you see the surface of the water now turning inside out. That's why it dries, and that surface will now have a greater CBR, greater strength if you tested it. around you. So by pressing there, you've created strength around you. And that's the principle. You just take that idea to a sphere that's got nowhere to go. So the footprint is now surrounding the sphere, compressing it. And so what will happen is that when the water turns inside out, the surface doesn't, the force does. And it's the size of the force field that's created from cavitation of force itself that sets the distance of the cosmic microwave background and all the layers in between. And that the key one is here, where we breathe, the meter squared per second squared transform, the transform of life, where because the heart force field has mass and it's flopped down, it's rotating clockwise, which is the same as the pseudo vector in the natural kinetic vector, natural kinetic tensor. It shows that clockwise is the Fibonaccian clockwise coil spring is a pseudo vector. It only exists as its entry point, as fast as it's going. The whole geometry is built. It's wonderful. And so, just to say about the two states of water, really, in the model. And so the inertial force now is the light. As light expands, it is existing here at the centre and at the cosmic microwave background at the same time. Spooky action at a distance. So there's no light travelling. Light doesn't travel. Light exists. And it exists here at the centre and at the outside. There is an expansive force on it, because the light wants to travel, but it's done its work, right? It's done that. And so it bends because the surface has an elastic response of its own, because as we observe it, it settles into temperature zones. And the work of Max Tegmark with the monopoles, where you see it, the tiny gradients, you can see that it's actually a yin-yang surrounding us, the CMB, with us at the centre. The elastic response of that bends the light. So each light fibre bends, fractures into a coil, spider's web, spider's silk, observation in nature, fractures into a coil. But the system is just full of these light fibres, infinite number. They're wafting around. That's what everything's made from, light fibres. And so you see the amino acids in our cells, in the cells of the postman, the walking postman inside the cells, created from amino acid and behaviour. So all that exists is actually the behaviour and light. And that behaviour is choice. And so you choose. So you can see the yin-yang of temperature around us. Know that is controlled by the pulse of our human heart. If we beat it correctly with love, then nature knows that we love it. We know we love God. That's God. I'm just describing to you the cosmic microwave background. It exists as life. It has nuclei. Each of those windows, those hexagonal windows, is a centre of bending. A perfect sphere of a yin-yang cell. And that's the neutrino and the anti-neutrino. Yeah, and we're one of those. We are one of them. That's why we don't see the other one. It's consciousness. Centres of bending. One of those centres of bending is you. That's where your consciousness exists. You exist eternally. That's bending of light. It's called life. So you exist as life there, and you manifest it down here. When you know that this system is real and works, you can go, oh, we can control that. Yes, we can. How do we do it? We love our God. Right? With all our minds, with all our hearts, with all our souls, and with all our might. We love our neighbour as we love ourselves. And we are the ones responsible for our health and safety, and we will not endanger the health and safety of anyone else or anything else without consent. Very simple. That's called plus behaviour. We build empathy from that platform, gentlemen, in a matriarchal society where there's alpha males and juvenile males, and the juvenile males don't have sex. You have to earn the right to have sex. By becoming an alpha male, how do you do that? How do you think? Ready? Follow the Rebel King.